Popak, we had a huge decision today in Manhattan in the Alvin Bragg case, the election interference case, where Judge Juan Merchan was holding a hearing today to find out whether or not this big document dump that the Southern District gave to the defense and to the prosecution at the 11th hour, whether that would cause a delay here. And the judge ruled that it should not cause anything more than the 30-day delay that he had initially granted, so that Trump has time to review the documents that was turned over. And so the trial now is starting April 15th. Okay. If you hear that, that's significant. That's a date set in stone. That date is going April 15th. For the first time, a former president, Donald Trump, is going to be sitting as a defendant in a criminal case. And he is going to, they're starting jury selection that day. Trump asked for some time because he said the Jewish holidays are coming around then. The judge says if we need to press pause for a day or two, that's fine, but we're not stopping the trial for that. We're going forward. And Donald Trump afterward came out and said, this is election interference. So that's interesting. That's the one thing that both Alvin Bragg and Donald Trump agree on, is that this case is about election interference. But Alvin Bragg says that in 2016, and into 2017, this was Donald Trump's attempt to suppress information from voters so that he would not be able to have the information come out after the Access Hollywood tape, after he admitted to essentially sexually assaulting women without their consent in that tape. He didn't want more information coming out about who he really is. And so when Stormy Daniels came forward and was going to talk about money or talk about an affair that they had, or a relationship that they had, or whatever you want to call it, they paid her off so that wouldn't come out. And Alvin Bragg is saying that that's an election interference case. Interestingly, Donald Trump also came out and said Alvin Bragg never wanted to bring this case, but he was pressured to bring this case. That's a new one that I think he's test driving. He's trying to bring a new theory out there now, which is I think strange. I haven't heard that one yet, or heard that one before. But Judge Merchan, who I've appeared before many times, he's a judge who calls balls and strikes. He's not a pro-government or people's judge. He's not a pro-defense judge. He is very down the middle. He looks at what the law is. He rules on the law. And that's what you see him doing here. He is not allowing Donald Trump to delay this case any further, which is obviously what he tries to do in all of his cases, because he doesn't want to be held accountable. He is not letting him bring in these extraneous information. Like, for example, some of the documents that Donald Trump wants to talk about are things where when Michael Cohen talked to the special counsel Bob Mueller, and Judge Merchan this morning said that is absolutely has nothing to do with this case, and you're not going to bring that up during this trial. And you're going to see a flurry of pretrial motions between now and the actual trial, because that's what happens during every pretrial scenario like we're in right now in the weeks leading up to it. But that is not going to derail this case. That's a normal part of the procedure to see any of these pretrial motions going. So, Popak, what do you make of today, this huge information that we got that the trial is actually starting?
Judge Merchan, as we expected, is running a very tight ship. He took very, very seriously the charges made by the Trump side to try to delay things, that there was prosecutorial misconduct, judicial misconduct in the handling of the late disclosure by effectively the federal prosecutors off a subpoena by Donald Trump that he late served. So he created his own mess. But then Donald Trump turned around and said, aha, 75,000 pages of documents came to me sort of late. It's going to be very hard for me to put a trial on in defense as a result, and therefore prosecutorial discretion, misconduct and trial misconduct. And Merchan was like, all right, you made those allegations, Mr. Blanche, on behalf of Mr. Trump. He refused to call him President Trump, even though that's how That's how Todd Blanche, the lawyer for Donald Trump, introduced him. He said, you made some very serious charges. And then for the next hour, the judge laid in to Donald Trump's lawyers, much to the chagrin of Donald Trump. This is from courtroom observers who were in the room, and increasingly getting fidgety Donald Trump about, let me get this straight. You make these charges, you make these allegations. You don't have one case to support it. You don't have any evidence to support it. We take this very seriously here in New York, Mr. Blanche, and you're attacking the court and the prosecutors. All that I see is normal run-of-the-mill document production issues that happen in every case. There's always some discovery issue, but people don't go running around calling judges corrupt and prosecutors corrupt. How do you account for yourself, Mr. Blanche? And Mr. Blanche and Trump obviously were not ready to take full fire from the bench. I guess they thought they'd just be debating the issues in sort of Queensberry rules today between themselves and the New York and the Manhattan prosecutors, the DA. No, Judge Merchan was the inquisitor, and he was none too pleased. So after he was done ripping Mr. Blanche a new back portal, as I like to kindly say, he then turned to the issue of the request for the delay, which he quickly denied. And we had a little betting pool going on here. I think Ben said May. I said April 15th. I won. April 15th is the date. Jewish holidays notwithstanding, if there's a Jewish observant person in the jury pool, they'll wait a couple of days and give them some time off and put the jury trial on pause. This is important, Karen, as you laid out, because the trial itself, when we knew this was coming, anybody that is a seasoned court watcher and a court watcher of these courts practicing there knew that Judge Merchan last week had sort of cleared out all of the low-hanging fruit and all the brush. He had denied basically all of Donald Trump's motions related to evidence and witnesses, primarily about Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. Cleared that out. Cleared out all the other motions to dismiss the indictment and everything else. And there was really nothing left to say. There wasn't. He didn't want to be accused of that he was sitting as a judge on anything that would have delayed the trial. So that when they got to today, and the judge gave them today, he said, "Fine, you're making some serious allegations." This is not what the judge said, but this is how we read it, about prosecutorial and judicial misconduct. We'll see everybody on the 25th of March for an evidentiary hearing. And if I'm Donald Trump's lawyers, I'm like, ooh. We got to come loaded here. We better bring it now. We got rubber meets the road on the 25th. They didn't. They came in with a very scant amount of any kind of support for this. They just thought they were going to tap dance their way through this, and maybe by a week or two or a month or two. That was never going to work with Judge Merchan. That's why none of us on Legal AF are surprised by the fact that this trial is starting. Now, what does that mean? We've talked about it so much. We've gotten almost fatigued by it. Donald Trump is going to have to sit in a courtroom 5 days a week at 9:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 days a week for 6 to 8 weeks, starting from the beginning of trial. Doesn't matter whether it's Super Tuesday, fantastic, fabulous Thursday, primary Sunday. It doesn't matter. Okay. Judge or a speech or a rally or a fundraiser, or I'm the leading candidate for president, even though the recent polling shows that he's not, or anything else. He is nothing more than, as of today, as he was with the day of the indictment, a criminal defendant in the criminal process of New York, whose liberty is in the hands of a person in a black robe named Judge Merchan, and ultimate liberty in the hands of jurors from New York who will be picked starting on the 15th of April. And that's it. He has to be there. He doesn't get a hall pass. They're going to have to do the security plan around it. And he'll have to sit there like every other criminal defendant, wearing an orange jumpsuit. I forget the color for New York these days, or not. That's it. Now, he did get, just to be fair and balanced here, or at least not blow smoke or sunshine on the same hot take, Trump got a partial victory today on the civil side related to his finances, with the appellate division first department, which sits over this very same court that we're talking about, sits over all courts, civil and criminal, in New York and Manhattan. The chief justice, the presiding justice over the appellate division, Barbara Renwick, who's the first person of color actually ever to be a presiding judge over an appellate division in New York, hard to believe. She gave him a reprieve today. She cut down by 60% the amount that Donald Trump's going to have to come up with in scratch to stop the enforcement of that $465 million fraud judgment against him. He only has to post, and I say only, $175 million, either in cash or by a bond. He's got 10 days to do it, which is the 4th of April. And then they actually gave him another little bit of a break because they obviously they are judges, but they're also human beings. They read the paper and watch the media. They knew that he has a criminal trial. They didn't know the date until just now, but sometime in the spring in front of one of their courts, and Judge Maran, and that he has other criminal problems throughout the course of the summer. So they put their appeal for this particular $465 million judgment and the other aspects of the appeal off until the September term of the appellate division, meaning Donald Trump's got to get his brief in, but not before July 8th, which is the date for the briefing for a September term appellate division case. And that'll all continue throughout the course of the summer. It won't stop because of the criminal proceedings. If he perfects his appeal by the brief on the 8th of July and he posts $175 million on April 4th, he's not going to have to worry about his assets being ripped away from him for now. But they did not disturb the monitorship that has been established by the judge, nor the independent compliance director, or any other aspect of the order of Judge Engoron, except the kids and Donald Trump and some others get to continue to operate the businesses in the meantime, and they get to go to New York banks for loans if they can get one. So it was a mixed bag day. We knew today was a huge day. We can't wait till we get to our Wednesday edition of Legal AF with Karen and me. But we knew today was a big day, a mixed bag. If he was trying to stay out of a criminal trial and not have it happen in April, not happening. If he's trying to avoid having to scratch up more money than he possibly can collect at the moment, he got that win. And I don't think it's completely coincidental, given the appellate division sits over criminal and civil. What did you make of, Karen, of Judge Merchan ripping Blanche a new one based on prosecutorial misconduct allegations without any support, judge misconduct without any support, and this appellate division sort of giving a little bit and taking a little bit with both hands?
So Judge Merchan very much did not like what Todd Blanche and Donald Trump were bringing to the table today, because honestly, that they had a lot of documents that were given to them in a searchable format, meaning they had all this time now to look for the smoking gun, the Brady, the exculpatory information, the stuff that could show some sort of prosecutorial misconduct, which is really what everyone was waiting for, because Todd Blanche made some pretty intense accusations about the prosecution. And so the judge was waiting to hear, when you ask for the sanction to have the case be dismissed because of a discovery violation, you better have the goods. You can't just say it and assume that somehow a judge is going to listen to it. And that's a huge accusation to make. Donald Trump walks around constantly saying out loud that, oh, this person's corrupt, that person's deranged. He goes out and says things like that. But Donald Trump's not a lawyer. He's not an officer of the court. Todd Blanche is. And so if he goes and writes a motion, which he did, and he is asking the judge for a remedy, which he did, which is, I want this case dismissed because of a discovery violation. If you ask that as an officer of the court, you better have the goods. And he didn't have the goods. There was not a single piece of paper in this production of thousands of documents that they were given. And again, he could easily do search terms the way everybody else does, right? Just because there are thousands of documents doesn't mean you have to go through one by one to look at them all. And so he can look for Cohen, he can look for whatever his defense is going to be, whatever he's looking for. And he's got an army of people that can look through it and find a document for him. And so, of course, he didn't find anything. And frankly, the reason nothing is in there is because the people, right, the prosecutors also have an obligation to identify what's called Brady material or exculpatory information. And so I can guarantee the office of the Manhattan DA's office, which has upwards of 300 plus lawyers in the office. They could put as many lawyers on it as they need, and I can assure you they have been going through this with a fine-tooth comb. And if they found something that was exculpatory or Brady, they have an obligation under the law to bring that forward and identify that for Donald Trump and for the defense. And so you didn't hear from it from either side because it's not there. This is irrelevant, largely irrelevant documents. There is no prosecutorial misconduct. And the judge basically called Todd Blanche out on it, saying, how dare you make these types, he didn't say this, but this is how I'm interpreting what he said. How dare you make these accusations and not come up with any sort of evidence of it in my courtroom? And you could tell by his terse responses to Mr. Blanche that, and he was absolutely setting the table, which is, don't pull that here. I don't mess with that here. And the other thing you're going to listen for is whether or not the judge has already issued Donald Trump what's known as Parker warnings. So I'm not sure if he's done it yet, but if he hasn't done it yet, he will do it soon. Those are warnings that you have to issue to a defendant if you want the trial to proceed in his absence, if he voluntarily absents himself from the trial. So let's say Donald Trump refuses to come to court. So long as these warnings, these Parker warnings, have been read to him, which basically essentially says to him, you have a right to be here, you have a right to cross-examine witnesses. If you choose not to show up, then the trial can go on without you, and will go on without you, and you can even be sentenced in absentia. So, but you have to be given these Parker warnings. So we'll see if he's already been given them or not, but this judge will issue them, because if for some reason Donald Trump chooses not to come, if he chooses to do the campaign trail instead, if he chooses to not participate, I think that the trial will continue to go on. And so the judge, that is something that you're going to hear Judge Merchan be giving to Donald Trump in the coming weeks. And just this, to have to be bailed out, just changing the subject to this other thing that's happening today, where we expected the judgment of $500 million to be executed. I mean, how embarrassing for Donald Trump that he couldn't come up with the money, despite going on the air constantly, him and his spokespeople and Alina Habba saying how he's a billionaire. Of course he has the money. He had to be bailed out by the court. He didn't have the money. So not surprising there, because the whole point of that case is that he was lying about his net worth, lying about his assets and what they're valued. And I think this is a perfect example of why he had to be bailed out today.
Yeah, I think that's great. I like the Parker warning thing. That's a little different than in federal court. I think that's a very good thing to keep an eye on if he's not there. Feds are a little bit differently, but I think you're right. I think one of our producers, I think it was Salty, had a good line about Donald Trump and all of this. Installment plan Don or monthly payment Don or whatever. Yeah, I mean, he's had to. I mean, as I said on a prior hot take, I didn't think he was going to come up with the money today, even if the appellate division didn't bail him out. I think the plan was he would wait until there was an actual attempt to sell a piece of property, and then he would try to redeem it as the judgment debtor at like 30 days, 45, and 60 days from now. He sort of had a built-in extension of time if he needed it. Of course, he'd have to go through the public humiliation, assuming Donald Trump can be humiliated, of having to watch his properties be up for sale. But the appellate division stepped in. It's going to be interesting. Donald Trump loves to go after people of color, especially those in positions of authority, and especially women, and attack them in a misogynist and racist way. The person that bailed him out today is the first person of color to preside over an appellate division, any appellate division in New York at all, Barbara Renwick, who got appointed by Governor Hochul recently. And I have a feeling you're not going to hear a word out of Donald Trump other than graciously complimenting the appellate court for making a ruling in his favor. But we'll continue to follow everything that we just outlined here. We do it in one place. We do it on Legal AF every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, only on this YouTube channel, exclusively here. And then on hot takes like this one, about every hour at that same intersection of law and politics. And we do it with the leaders of Legal AF, who collectively have, I don't know, over 100 years of experience. God, it sounds old, in law, in federal court and state court, civil and criminal, former prosecutors like Karen Friedman-McNiffalo, defense lawyers like myself, and civil rights lawyers like Ben Meiselas, co-founder of the MeidasTouch Network. So until we get together, Karen and I have a big show on Wednesday. It just got a lot bigger, Karen, with these two developments just Monday morning. We'll see what the rest of the week brings, but on the midweek edition of Legal AF, we'll do that at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, live on YouTube, and then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. And then we'll pick it up again on the weekend with Ben Meiselas and me on the weekend edition of Legal AF. So until our own respective hot takes, who's ever doing them, until our next Legal AF, Karen Friedman-McNiffalo, Michael Popak, signing off.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.